That was awful. Mm-hmm. It's totally terrifying now. And leaves of different realities all around me. I can look into the future, and the present is right here in each of those, and it goes on out to many years from now. It goes to infinity upward. And it's a tremendous amount of power right through this.
He was known as the man who fractured reality and returned to reveal what lies beyond its edge. His name was Dr. John C. Lilly, a scientist once honored within the halls of medicine, before venturing into realms no one else dared to tread.
In the province of mind, what one believes to be true either is true or becomes true within certain limits. These limits are to be found experimentally and experientially. When so found, these limits turn out to be further beliefs to be transcended.
Lilly insisted the mind was far more than mere thought or imagination. To him, it was a realm and infinite expanse of heavens and hells, inhabited by presences that whispered in patterns too deliberate to be dismissed as chance. He described entire realities unfurled before him, as though the universe were a vast library, each corridor leading to another version of existence. To most, his visions sounded like delusion, the ramblings of a man who had strayed too far. But Lilly never faltered. He maintained that he had crossed beyond the known boundaries of reality itself. And what he brought back was not illusion, not fantasy, but a warning.
You've probably devoted your whole life, and certainly many decades recently, to pushing to see, what really were the limits.
Right.
Going into new realities, taking on the belief systems of those realities, and then coming back to your basic working reality and challenging those beliefs, integrating those beliefs
right.
with your own. In your writings, you've explored almost every state of consciousness I could imagine. You've established probably a more significant mapping of inner space than almost any other modern person, and I think we all owe a great debt to you for that.
I don't get stuck with them. I've abandoned all of them. It's impossible. Mm-hmm. Because they're infinities within the mind.
Dr. John C. Lilly was never one to stay inside the lines. Once a trusted neuroscientist for the National Institutes of Health, he began as a respected researcher of the brain, human behavior, even dolphins. But then he turned his instruments inward, into the hidden depths of the mind. That choice changed everything. What he described no longer sounded like science, but something far stranger, like stepping beyond reality itself. Lilly became known for a single maxim. In the province of the mind, what one believes to be true either is true or becomes true. To him, belief didn't just influence reality, it created it.
There's one use of language that's valid. That's the injunctive use, telling you how to do things. The descriptive one is very poor. And William James said it. The other world is a separation from this one by the thinnest of screens. And I found this screen is language. Mm-hmm. So you have to abandon it when you're going to these other realities.
If a belief was held strongly enough, it became the very framework of life. But each belief carried a hidden limit, a wall. And when that wall was broken, another layer of reality emerged.
This one, you take a light and can literally move it by shining the light on these pieces of obsidian. And literally the thing starts moving based off of light. It's going to be studied at a lab here in America. It is in America. It's safe and sound. But it's quite the project to get in there innovatively and understand how it works. And so there's a team that's working on it in California. What could the power source be? I think magnetic. If I had to guess, it's something to do with magnets. And if you look at Nikola Tesla's work and some of the things he was working on, patent-wise, things that he figured out possibly that may have related to this, and maybe even why his research is still not released to us today. What's interesting is both those sensors, if you put it outside, it'll follow the sun based on where the sun is in the sky. The sun will be hitting one or other of those, I don't know what they're called, just the obsidian pieces, and it'll hold it in a position based on the light. So as the sun moves across the sky, the dish will move. There was clearly a level of engineering going on here and technology going on here that resonates with Plato's Atlantis talk. I mean, the Atlantis technology, if these are 40,000 years old, then it could be from that era.
People and history, and gave the Wabos the history. You have no honor. So first of all, I just had to Google Wabo, and it means wannabe aboriginals. Make of that what you will.
You may be wondering, were there even blacks in China? And the answer to that is yes. There were indeed blacks in ancient China. The skeletal remains from southern China are predominantly Negroid. In northern China, the blacks founded many civilizations. The three major empires of China was the Jia dynasty, the Shang Yin dynasty, and the Zhao dynasty. The Zhao dynasty was the first dynasty founded by the Mongoloid people in China, called the Hua. Chinese civilization began along the Yellow River. Here the soil was fertile, and black Chinese farmers grew millet 4,000 years ago, and later soybeans. They also raised pig and cattle. By 3500 BC, the blacks in China were raising silkworms and making silk.
I want to know something that nobody's ready for in 2025 except for those who already seem to fucking know it. Black people, they are the aboriginals of every continent. Dark-skinned people are the aboriginals of every continent. Native Americans migrated over the ice bridge from Siberia, that would be Asia, and became what we now know as Native Americans.
If Native Americans originally descended from a cave in Yunnan, China, does that mean that the first Americans were Chinese? Current Biology magazine released a scientific study that links the DNA of modern-day Native Americans to a group of people who used to live in the caves of Yunnan, China. The Red Deer Caves. Here is a photo depiction of what they looked like. Huh? All right, so what is new about this information that is on top of the fact that, Native Americans crossed the Bering Strait? Well, basically, it just says that there's a third group of people, not just Siberians, not just Central Asians, but people from essentially modern-day Southeast Asia, because, the Red Deer Caves that borders Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, they're the ones that became Native Americans.
But the people who were on that land before them and the ice bridge even formed were black people.
Black people. They don't want you to believe that. They don't want you to know who you are because you're Indian. Not those type of Indians. The ones in America. Not in the 7-Elevens. In the reservations. You were indigenous to this land. And you own this promised land. But they don't want you to know that.
So this guy's upset because I talked about the research findings of Professor Jin Li of Shanghai's Fudan University, indicating that there is ancient black ancestry among the Chinese people. This professor talks about ancient migration patterns between Africa and Asia dating back some 60,000 years. And you can even see the likeness today when you compare the features of Chinese people and the Khoisan people of South Africa.
However, there is something that could settle this debate of where the Chinese come from once and for all.
After that,
I'm meeting Professor Jin Li, one of China's leading geneticists. Recently, he led a project that set out to prove that the Chinese evolved independently from everyone else, from Homo erectus, here in China.
Before the project started, I was hoping that I could identify or could be able to find the evidence that support independent origin of Chinese in China, because I'm a Chinese and came from China, and through the education process, I always believed that there's something special about Chinese.
He singled out a male genetic marker, which only appeared about 80,000 years ago in Africa. So any man who carries that marker must have recent African ancestors and can't be descended from the more ancient Asian Homo erectus. Jin took DNA from over 160 ethnic groups around East Asia. Over 12,000 samples. And so, what did you find?
We did not see even one single individual that could be considered as the descendant of the Homo erectus in China. Rather, everybody was a descendant of our ancestors from Africa.
The result couldn't have been any clearer.
How did that make you feel? As a Chinese person?
After I saw the evidences that we generate in my laboratory, I think we should all be happy with that, because after all, modern humans from different part of the world are not so different from each other, and we are very close relatives.
Cultural hero Huang Di is a direct link of Africa. His name is pronounced in Old Chinese as Yuhai Handi or Hu Nak Kunte. He was supposed to have arrived in China from the west in 2282 BC.
There you go, here is the ether in an 1800s book that used to be in schools until they removed it. Because remember, the ether used to be in the school curriculum up until 1910, until they stopped teaching it because it was the secret to free energy. And they would harness this ether from using copper rods, gold antennas, red mercury on the tops of buildings, which would act as conductors for the ether, which is present in the atmosphere. And that's another reason they tell you that copper is toxic, because you'll find the more copper you have in your house, the more energy and frequency your house will contain. So people would have copper antennas on their roofs, and this would then boost the frequency of all the individuals in the house, because the copper was conducting the energy from the ether, which was then transferred into the house, because the ether is present everywhere in the atmosphere. And that's why all the old world buildings had antennas on, because they were harnessing the ether and the frequency. So when you start to get into the ether and free energy, it gets very interesting.
Oh, you son of a bitch. Oh, we got your ass. We've got your ass now. So this is why you took away all the bells. You thought we weren't gonna find out. Reptilian. I'm a slew of reptilian. How many have I slewed? More than 1 million. You see, the giant bells could not only emit healing frequencies, but could also produce specific vibrations that would repel demonic beings and counter the shape-shifting abilities of the reptilians. Oh, you son of a bitch. So you see, there is power in sound. There is power in frequency and vibration. This is why they don't want you to know anything. This is why they don't want you to play instruments. So I want everybody to put this on their to-do list. I want you to go out there and search for as many bells as you can find. And if you can't find any bells, I want you to find out how to make them and who's making them. Bully Slayers assemble. Bully Slaying business. Join me on the front line.
I don't believe in Jesus or none of that shit. That's not my ancestors' shit. So I'm not knocking y'all for being Christians, but I am knocking black people for being Christians. But I want to say this, bitch, you don't gotta believe in Jesus, but you need to know that there is a quantum intelligence that we consider God. God is an acronym for generator, organizer, and dispenser of reality. God is the highest extent of your mind, which uses elements and matter to express itself. So I'm controlling my body. I'm the consciousness in this body. That's God. God is the mind. God is one universal mind that we all express individually through our biological computers, aka our brains. It's one internet. It's 1,000 motherfuckers on the internet. That don't mean it's 1,000 internets. There's one mind. It's 1,000 organisms that express this mind differently within their own genetic capacity. But there's only one mind. The mind is God. This is why nobody's ever seen God, because nobody's ever seen their own mind.
Look at this old one world starfoot map, Vienna in 1769. Look at the date that it shows and look at the outline of this enormous city that was within the starfort. And it looks almost as if this cathedral or temple or whatever it was the energy source for the entire city. Like somehow they had free energy circulating through this entire starfort city, which is amazing to say the least.
The golds, the diamonds, what does that signify for the culture?
Back in the ancient times, we used to wear gold and put golds in our mouth, even during the times of ancient Kemet, which is ancient Egypt. We used to wear the gold because it contains an electrical conduction that has magnetic filaments. When you got gold in your mouth and you speak in your manifestations, that positive electrical frequency entraps the ether to where it's able to alchemize in physical form. This is why we had ancient Proto-Semitic language and ancient Moabite language, because those languages in itself hits the ruffles of the mouth. And when it hits the ruffles of the mouth, it stimulates the neurons in the brain, and that stimulation creates an influx of energy to where you stream down information from the mental plane and you upload it into the neurological cortex, because those languages in itself is highly magnetic because it contains silicon and carbon.
They use a lot of copper too as well.
We used to do all types of copper because the copper corresponds with our genetics, because copper is also creating the influx of dynamos. The dynamos is the iron in the blood that speeds up your vibration.
So they used to actually have devices where they could communicate with each other through these glass sphere objects, through the power of the ether. And bear in mind, this was in the 1800s. They had far more advanced technology than we do have now. And the buildings back this evidence up as well. They essentially had FaceTime in the 1800s through these devices. Not to mention they could create free energy through the buildings and the shapes of these buildings, through those big antennas that you can see on the buildings that would harness atmospherical energy through metals like copper and mercury, specifically red mercury. So then you have to ask the question, where did all this technology go? And why did they remove this free energy technology? And you have to understand that they removed this technology because almost all of it utilized free energy from the ether as the fifth element. And the ether was available to everyone, as the ether is infinite and it was free. But the Rockefellers could not profit from the ether because free energy cannot have a profit to it. So then during World War I, all of these buildings alongside the ether were destroyed, and then all of the documents about the ether were completely fabricated. And that's exactly why you have the electricity you have today, because the profits are extremely high and they can actually sell it, unlike the ether.
Meditation. I was sitting on the floor, and my spine and I'm not straight, and suddenly a line of light comes down through my spine, and there are leaves of different realities all around me. I could look into the future, and the present is right here in each of those, and it goes on out to many years from now. It goes to infinity upwards, and it's a tremendous amount of power right through this.
He claimed he reached a place where all realities unfolded before him. Not one life, not one timeline, but every possible version of himself across the universe. He described it as standing inside an infinite library, endless shelves stretching into eternity, each holding another world, another choice, another outcome already alive. In that state, he believed he could choose, not at random, but deliberately flipping through the pages of existence and selecting the story that would become his life. To most, it sounded like fantasy. Yet in 2022, Nature Physics published research on quantum multiverse branching, suggesting that every outcome exists simultaneously until one path is chosen. Modern physics now whispers what Lilly once screamed from the edge of his mind. Multiple realities may not be imagination, but structure. Was he hallucinating? Or did he glimpse the truth science is only beginning to touch? Lilly swore he had seen it directly, consciousness itself acting as the key to that library of worlds. But his journey came at a cost. He wasn't a careful explorer. He pushed himself with powerful substances, testing how far the mind could stretch before it shattered. He admitted that these were not gentle experiments. They left scars, both physical and psychological. And yet, he kept going, risking sanity, safety, even identity, convinced that the knowledge was worth the danger. Now, decades later, his visions sound less like fringe ramblings and more like the very conversations dominating science and philosophy. Simulation theory, virtual reality, alternate timelines. Are we living in a fixed physical world or inside something designed, coded, and layered like a program? John Lilly went further than almost anyone dared. He broke through reality, stepped into its ruins, and returned with stories that disturb and inspire to this day. His message was simple, but dangerous. Build your belief, live inside it, then tear it apart again and again until something greater reveals itself. And it leaves us with one haunting question. If reality is only one program among many, what happens when you choose to step outside of it? The process never ended. Beyond every barrier waited another truth, deeper still.
Well, if you take the same kinds of trips, you'll find a different flora and fauna. Mm-hmm.
Each time.
Yeah, right. So the province of the mind, there are no limits.
And yet, if one pushes that very, very far, I guess no limits almost means nothing. There's nothing there. Limits is what defines things. It's what creates form.
Well, there are no limits that you put on it previously. And new limits may appear, which define it in an entirely new way, which is much larger.
It might sound mystical, but decades later science began circling back to the same idea. In 2019, cognitive researchers argued the brain doesn't record reality like a camera. It constructs it, filtering raw data into the world we perceive. Lilly had already claimed this in the 1960s and 70s.
Lilly had already been saying this back in the 1960s and 70s.
Before neuroscience
he had simply lived
up.
it through his experiments.
The real question is,
long before neuroscience
if your brain
had the
is
tools
building reality, what kind of world is it making for you? Lilly wasn't willing to leave that unanswered. He turned inward, returning with what he described as a map of heaven and hell. Like a cartographer of the mind, he laid it out in his 1972 book, The Center of the Cyclone, a system of levels of consciousness, moving upward into bliss and unity, or downward into terror and chaos. He wrote of states like +3 and +1, where he felt drawn out of his body into a vast union with creation itself.
Well, there's one state beyond +3. That's +1. But you're not allowed to remember that. Once you go into it, you have union with God, and so you're non-human. So there's no way you can recount what happened. There's no way of saying it, because it's beyond language.
Yes.
Well, all those states are beyond language. Language is a very poor instrument to express.
He described +12 as the blissful idiot state, where everything glowed golden and perfect, as if joy itself had saturated reality. But there were minus levels as well, and these were places no one would choose to enter. At -6, he said, he was dragged through a guided tour of hell, a realm of terror and despair that left him permanently scarred.
And then there are the minus states, but I don't go into those.
No, but at one point you wrote about the importance of going into the minus states and remaining perfectly aware, being conscious in those negative states, not trying to block out the negativity. And you described that, as I recall, as burning karma.
Yes. And then there's in the Center of the Cyclone, there's a chapter called A Guided Tour of Hell, which was -6. And that was awful. So I never had to get back to that. And I was never frightened again. I was totally terrified in that one.
I suppose it's what the Christian mystics sometimes refer to as the dark night of the soul.
Well, it was the dark night of my soul.
He admitted he never wanted to return. The experiences were surreal. Lilly once described hearing a bird call in ordinary life and suddenly perceiving its echo across the galaxy. At other times, he felt trapped in pits of horror, so deep that reason itself could not reach him. Unbelievable as they sound, modern research has drawn eerie parallels. A 2014 Frontiers in Psychology study found psychedelic volunteers